Welcome back to the Mega Meeple, the show all about gamers and the games that bring them together. I'm your host, Tom, and I want to thank you for hitting that download button. Now, if you like what you hear, please be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. And while you're there, leave us some kind words and put out some of that 5-star loving, okay? We'd really appreciate that. And I promise I'll call you in the morning. Now, if you have any ideas or suggestions of what you want to hear about, or maybe a topic, a discussion about the board games, now you can contact us through our website. It's www.themegameeple.com, and go to our social media page. All the links to our pages like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. You know all the ones. Okay, it can be found there at our social media page. And now you can also hear the podcast on our YouTube channel, as well as some unboxing videos, as boring as they are, but evidently unboxing videos is a thing, so I do them, and you can also see some reviews of games and gaming accessories, and the link to that is also on our social media page on the website. Alright, this is episode 3 of the Mega Meeple, and in this episode I'm going to go over the Dice Tower's nominations for the best games of 2016, and I will be giving you my pick of who I think the winners would be, if I was deciding it, and then talk about some things that I've been playing, some goodies I got in the mail, and then I teased it last week, but here it is. We have our very first guest. Oh my God, episode 3, and we already have a guest on. All right, well, let's see. This past week has been busy. Haven't played much, but I did get a little care package from one of my Kickstarters that I pledged and supported about 3 months ago, and I finally got it in the mail. And it is from Zen Bins. These are the same people that did the I don't want to call them inserts, but they're basically these plastic bins for Star Wars Rebellion that you could store your the miniatures from the Star Wars Rebellion in. Well, they basically did the same thing, but this time it's for Star Wars Destiny, the CCG game for cards and dice, and it's pretty neat. I'm gonna have I videotaped a review of it, and as I was getting ready to edit it, I thought to it, I was like, this looks like crap. I think I know I could do better, so I'm gonna reshoot the video and have that up in the YouTube channel within the next by the end of this weekend. But the written review will be up on the website. I'd say less than a day, and I'll have some photos and stuff of the Zen Bins in the review that you could look at. Well, this past week, the Dice Tower, I'm sure we all heard of them, little known company down in Florida, a group of guys that review games. They have announced their nominees for the best games of 2016. And I'll put a link to this and all the other stories that we talk about on these episodes on our website on the episode show notes. But I want to just go through these nominations, and I just want to give you my pick of who I think the winners are. Now, I want to preface this with these are my picks. Okay, these are nominations that have been declared by Dice Tower, and I'm just picking out who I think should win. So these are my choices. Your choices may vary. Your mileage may vary. The beautiful thing about this is there is no wrong answer. Everybody has different tastes. Everybody likes different types of games. So, if you like a game and you think that's the number one in a particular category, and that's the winner for that particular category, and that's cool. That's the beautiful thing about this. There's so much variety out there that you could find a game that you really, really like. Okay, so let's get into the Dice Tower nominees for the best games of 2016. First up, the best game from a new designer. Now, the game has to be the designer's first or second published game to qualify for this award. All right, so we have the nominees as Kingdom Death Monster, Vast the Crystal Caverns, Adrenaline, Terraforming Mars, and the Manhattan Project Energy Empire. All right, well, my pick, what I think is the winner for this particular award, I would pick Terraforming Mars. I think that from a new designer, this one is a lot of fun. The graphics and the components are really good. You could play it. There's a solo variant. You could play it numerous players. Yeah, so that's my pick for the best game from a new designer, Terraforming Mars. Best artwork. The nominees are Arkham Horror, the card game, Inish, Islebound, Kanagawa, I think I'm pronouncing that right. It looks like it is, and Scythe. Well, for best artwork, if you're going to talk about artwork, you got to be talking about Scythe. I mean, the game was the art came first, and then the game was built around that that universe, that world that the Polish artist had created. And hint, hint, you're going to hear the background story about that sometime, maybe later on in this episode. Okay, moving on. The best theme. The nominations are Black Orchestra, Captain Sonar, Role Player, Seafall, and Terraforming Mars. I'm going to give the nod to Captain Sonar. The thing with that is you get a good group of people together, and you have to have like a certain persona or certain personality to be able to play this game, because it's a lot of shouting, a lot of yelling and stuff like that, at least the games that I've been in. And for the theme, you could really submerge yourself into the... See what I did there? Captain Sonar, submarine, submerge. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. Captain Sonar for the best theme of 2016. Next award is Best Two-Player Game. The nominees are 13 Days, The Cuban Missile Crisis, Arkham Horror, the card game, Codex Card Game Strategy, Star Wars Destiny, and Star Wars Rebellion. I'm going to give the nod here to Star Wars Destiny, because the community around that game is so engaging. They're passionate. They're very gracious. I got to tell you some stories. I won't do it now, but some really cool gifts that my friends in the Star Wars Destiny group had given me at one point when I was first getting involved in the game. So yeah, Star Wars Destiny is definitely my pick for that. The next award is Best Reprint. Nominees are 51st State Master Set, Escape from Aliens in Outer Space, Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition, Arkwright, and Robinson Crusoe. All right, when you're talking about a game that has been reprinted and has not only improved the quality of the components, or it not just improved the gameplay, maybe smoothed out some really rough edges from the first print, but even going so far as to just changing the whole overall dynamic of the game. You gotta give it to Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition. Now, people will argue that they don't like the app, but let me tell you, you ask anybody who was stuck with that role of having to be the GM, and it's like you got one person in your gaming group that if they're able to play that one person in a one versus all game, chances are that's the only role that they get. They don't get to play as the other characters. What Mansions of Madness Second Edition with the app did was it enabled everybody to play as an investigator. So the burden of the setup and the gameplay wasn't just on one person. And the setup for the second edition is not even 10 minutes. Compared to the first edition, when you had the setup was real involved, it was convoluted, and if the person GMing it had one mistake, he just blew the whole game to hell. So have the burden on the app to be able to do all that stuff, and everybody gets to play as an investigator, and it's really cool, and it's very atmospheric. It's just a really fun game. Next award is for the best expansion. The nominees are Seven Wonders Duel Pantheon, Scythe Invaders from Afar, Stockpile Continuing Corruption, Time Stories Prophecy of Dragons, and Time Stories Under the Mask. It was hard to narrow it down to one thing. I narrowed it down to one of the two Time Stories because I really enjoy that game. And then the next hurdle was to just narrow it down to one of those. But I think the Time Stories Prophecy of Dragons is my pick for the best expansion of 2016. It ekes out slightly more ahead of Under the Mask. Not much, but enough for me to choose that one as my winner. All right. The next award is for the best party game. Nominees are Codename Pictures, Captain Sonar, Happy Salmon, Junk Art, and Secret Hitler. Well, that's a foregone conclusion. I think definitely goes to Codename Pictures. Next award is Best Cooperative Game. Nominees are Arkham Horror, the card game, Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle, Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition, Mechs vs. Minions, and Pandemic Reign of Cthulhu. Alright, and I'm going to give the award to the best cooperative game to Mechs vs. Minions. That is definitely something that you really have to cooperate together in order to successfully complete the missions, because you either all win or you all lose. There's no in between. Alright, so the best family game award, and the nominees are Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle, Ice Cool, Junk Art, Karuba, and Sushi Go Party. I am going to give this award to Ice Cool because it's a really cool game, and come on, it's penguins. Who doesn't like penguins? Come on. Now for the award of the best strategy game, the nominees are A Feast for Odin, Great Western Trail, Scythe, Star Wars Rebellion, and Terraforming Mars. This one here, for strategy, I'm going to give this nod to Scythe. For best board game production, the nominees are Conan, The Others, Seven Sins, Mechs vs. Minions, Scythe, Star Wars Rebellion. Alright, if we're talking production, hands down, you got to give it to Mechs vs. Minions. Okay? You got a company who doesn't do board games. They do video games. It's Riot Games. They're the people behind the whole League of Legends video game. And they put out their very first board game, and the quality of the components and the production is far better than a lot of other companies who that's all they do is produce games. And here you got a company that does video games, put out their very first board game, and they put them all to shame. I mean, we're talking about the quality of the components, talking about the paint and the artwork, the painted miniatures, and then just the way the inserts are, the way they organized everything in the box. I mean, a person with OCD had to have designed that. I don't know who, but they had to have OCD because everything has its place. There's a place for everything there. I mean, it's just incredible. It's an OCDer's wet dream. Now, for the most innovative game, the nominees are Captain Sonar, Clank the Deck Building Adventure, Millennium Blades, Mystic Vale, and Vast the Crystal Caverns. As far as innovation goes, I would have to give the nod to Mystic Vale. That whole card crafting mechanic is really, really cool and interesting, and something that I've never seen in a board game before. That you're actually designing and crafting your cards as part of the gameplay. It's pretty neat. Next award is for the best game from a small publisher. Now, they must have published 5 or fewer games at the beginning of 2015. And the nominees are Arkwright, Cottage Garden, Not Alone, Role Player, and Vast the Crystal Caverns. For this one here, best game from a new publisher, I'm going to give that to Vast the Crystal Caverns. That's just a really neat dynamic that game has. This is not a game that you can just plop down in front of people and have one person teach it and everybody understand what's going on. Each player and each character has their own objective, their own board, their own player aid, their own strategy, their own mechanics that's different from everybody else. And then finally, the game of the year. The nominees are Adrenaline, Captain Sonar, Cry Havoc, A Feast for Odin, Great Western Trail, Inish, Mechs vs. Minions, Scythe, Star Wars Rebellion, and Terraforming Mars, and WoW. I hate to be the person that has to just pick one of those for the game of the year. And I'm glad I'm not that person, because I like all of them. And to narrow it down just to one is really, really difficult. So let me ask you guys, what's your pick for the best game of the year 2016? And what about these other awards? Is your choice from the nominations the same as mine? If not, that's cool. That's the beautiful thing about this. There's no wrong or right answers. It's just whatever you like. And I'm just glad that we have so much variety in the types and styles of games out there that pretty much you could find anything that appeals to you. So let me know what you think. What games would you pick for winners? What about were some of these games that you like not nominated? Do you have any other type of awards that you would give to a game in 2016? Let us know. Go to our website, on our social media page, and just interact with me. Or you could contact me directly through the Contact Us page on the website. All right. Well, the time has come. I've spent the last week tweeting out little hints about who our very first guest is on the podcast. And I just can't believe that. Well, just episode 3. Episode 3, we already have our first guest. And it's a big guest. I teased you guys with it last week. I told you you're not going to want to miss this. And I'm glad you're not. If you're listening, you'll be happy you did. Tell all your friends about it too. You say, you got to listen to this. Because the person I interviewed for this podcast, and he was very gracious and kind to agree to be a part of my podcast this week, is none other than Jamey Stegmaier of Stonemaier Games. Yes, the Scythe creator. He's going to talk about Scythe. He's going to talk about Charterstone. He's going to talk about a whole bunch of other things. So without any more doodling around, let's get right to the interview. Well, welcome back to the Mega Meeple. And as promised last week, I have a very high-ranking person in the gaming industry that I'm very happy and proud to have on the show as our first interview for the podcast. And we have Jamey Stegmaier of Stonemaier Games. For those of you living under a rock that doesn't know that name, he made Viticulture, Euphoria, Between Two Cities, we're going to be talking about. Of course, the ever-popular Scythe, and the upcoming Charterstone. So, Jamey, thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. That was a very nice introduction. I appreciate it.
No problem. I was kind of almost expecting that you were too busy or not able to do it because, being a fledgling amoeba based, we're still in the amoeba stage of a podcast. We're very young, but just the fact that you're taking time to talk with us, it means a lot. It means a lot.
Yeah,
so,
I thought about it. Yeah, absolutely. I'm here to talk about anything you want to talk about today, Thomas. Anything you or your listeners want to hear.
All right. Well, I know just recently, I think you announced a expansion to one of your games, Between Two Cities. What can you tell us about Capitals?
That's right. Yeah, Between Two Cities is a tile-laying game that we released 2 years ago, and it was the first game that Stonemaier Games published that wasn't designed by me. So it's designed by Ben Rossett and Matthew O'Malley. And they've been spending the last 2 years, really over 2 years now, thinking about this expansion and working on it. And we're finally going to release it in early July. So we tried to keep the integrity of and I say we, Ben and Matthew did the vast majority of work on it. It's one of those things where they made it really, really easy because they did such a great job on the expansion. But they tried to keep the integrity of the original game, so it's still very much a game where you're building two cities, one to the left, one to the right, and you're working together with people on the left and your right to build those cities. But at the end of the game, there's only going to be one winner. It's a competitive game. And so they've added to this game by adding 3 different elements that you add. You add a bunch of more unique tiles that score in a different way. It's a new tile type called civic tiles. And they added, this is my favorite part, they added landscape mats. So instead of starting with a blank canvas, you start with a very specific landscape map that changes the configuration of the tiles. You put down a little bit, and you're building a 5x5 grid instead of 4x4. And there's also district tiles, which are kind of an end-game scoring thing where you're trying to connect certain tile types throughout your city. Have you had the chance to play Between Two Cities?
It's been a while. It was one of the first games that I played. I've only been in the gaming for about 2.5, 3 years. So,
okay, cool. Yeah. Yeah, we kind of positioned it as a gateway game for newer gamers getting into the hobby. It's, there aren't that many rules. It's pretty simple, and you have the help of the player on the left and the right in case they know how to play and you don't know how to play.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Now, I understand it has it's 3 to 7 players, but there's a 1 to 2 player variant. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, the 2-player game is a little different in that you're not working together with any player. You're just trying to build a city to the left and a city to the right. And then there's a solo variant where we use the Automa system, which is in several of our games, designed by Morten Monrad Peterson, which essentially creates it's a deck of cards that simulates human opponents, but in a deck of cards. So you feel like you're playing against other players, but it's just a deck of cards simulating that.
Okay. Well, mention about the Automa mechanism is an element of a lot of the games. Now, I read or heard somewhere, and again, it's on the internet, so you kind of take it with a grain of salt. But since we have you on the phone, we'll get the empirical evidence straight from the source. That particular mechanism was outsourced to another company, or how was that developed for the games?
Yeah, so it started with viticulture, specifically the Tuscany expansion to viticulture, where I was working on Tuscany, and I was intrigued by the element of adding a solo version of the game. And a guy who had volunteered for us for a while, Morton, the guy I mentioned, had started to develop this solo system of play. And he's a big solo gamer, and so I was like, you know this solo world so well. I don't know it at all. Would you be interested in designing a solo version of viticulture to put into Tuscany? And Morton started to design it, and so it was something I outsourced to another designer. The biggest impact that I probably had on it is that throughout that design process, Morton was trying to be very budget conscious, which I appreciate, but I kind of pushed him to have the freedom to add any components he needed. Because up until that point, a lot of solo games really were limited just to a few rules in the back of a rule book. Like they didn't add any new components to the game. Mm-hmm. And so I told Morton, I'm willing to spend money on this. I want to make it work really, really well. And so that's where he expanded to this deck of cards that simulates the opponent. And after he created that system, it really took off. And he did it for Scythe, he did it for Twin Cities, doing it for Charterstone, and he's even started to do it for a few other companies now too, when he has time. Like I think the most notable one, I think I'm allowed to say this, is that he is the new Terra Mystica offshoot, the sequel to Terra Mystica called I think Gaia Project. He is doing the solo Automa system for that game. Have you played Terra Mystica?
No, I haven't. At least not yet.
Okay, that's one of my favorite games. I love Terra Mystica. So when I heard that he was doing it for Gaia, I was eager for him to have him do that, even though he primarily works for Stonemaier games.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, that was. I know. I was first. I like the whole aspect of the Automa and the Scythe game. That was I think that's when I first started playing it solo and using that mechanism. Now, getting into Scythe, I mean that just took the gaming industry by storm. In fact, at least the local game stores in my area, it's hard to keep it on the shelf. I know this past weekend for International Tabletop Day, for the hours that I was at my local store, I saw Scythe being played 3 times at 3 different tables. And,
oh, wow. That's awesome.
They were selling raffle tickets for a local charity, and it was the grand prize was you were able to take home any game from the store free of charge.
Wow!
And guess what game? The winner chose Scythe. So
no way.
It is still going big and strong. So my understanding is that the artwork came before the game. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah. I discovered this artist named Jakub Rozalsk, who's over in Poland. He had started building this world of Scythe based on a real historical war that happened between Russia and Poland. And he let his imagination wander into this world. And I discovered it and immediately captured my attention, and I reached out to him and asked if I could design a game in that world and work with him to develop that world a little bit more so that it could work for the game and the game could work for the world. And so, yeah, that's how it all started out.
Now, was he a gamer, or what? Describe how that first conversation went, where he's just doing this art, and all of a sudden some guy from the U.S. calls him, and how did that go down? What was that discussion like?
Well, I kind of had assumed that he just wouldn't reply. I didn't know anything about him, but I've reached out to some people in the past, and actually many people reply that surprised me that they would reply at all. But I wasn't sure that he would. I didn't even know if he spoke English. But he did. Within, I think, a day or so, he replied. And he isn't a big gamer. I think he's played more video games. He loves the Witcher game series, and I think he's played a few miniatures games. He hadn't played much games, but he knew enough that he knew that the gaming world is pretty robust. Sometimes when you talk to someone who doesn't know at all how robust it is, it's almost hard to convince them that it is like a thriving industry. I didn't have to do that for him. He already got that. But he was actually enthusiastic from the start. I think he wanted to see his world grow into something bigger. So it was really encouraging. It's really one of the best collaborations I've ever had in my life. It's been really, really wonderful for both him and I to work on it.
Wow. And that's incredible. It's like,
yeah. Yeah, it's been really, really, really cool. And I'm glad you've enjoyed the Automa version of it, too. It's probably the most complicated Automa system that we have, just because of you're controlling enemies that have to move around the board. And but I'm sure there's a little bit of a learning curve, but I'm glad you've found a way to enjoy it.
Oh, yes, definitely. Yeah, I got my box is, I think my box now weighs about 20 pounds, because I have it all blinged out with the promos and stuff like that. Now, there's been some teases and stuff like that of a new expansion coming out where it introduces airships, or I think it's called the Wind Gambit.
Yeah, the Wind Gambit.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, we announced this about a month ago, and it's on target for release probably in October, November. We're still finalizing the mold of the airship itself, because the airships have to be able to carry, like on the miniature itself, they have to carry workers and resources, which is one of their functions. Each game, the airships will have different abilities. It's a randomized thing where you randomize some passive abilities and some aggressive abilities, and you pick one, and they apply to all the airships that all players have. Each player has one airship. But many of those abilities involve the ability to carry around workers and resources. So we're trying to get the molds to work with that function. But they're going to have, it's the first time we've added a new unit type to Scythe. So I'm really excited about it and excited to see them take shape on the board. And the expansion also adds something that is not as component heavy, but I'm also just as excited about, which are the resolution tiles, which add a twist to the end of the game and sometimes how the game itself is played. So instead of the game always ending the exact same way, when someone places their 6th star on the track, the game can end in 8 different ways now, or 9 different ways, I guess, including the original one.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Looking forward to that one. And I can tell you right now, you have to come up with a bigger box, because that's not going to fit in my box anytime soon. So
we're working on that. We're working on what I'm calling the big empty box, which will just be. It's a weird thing to produce, because I feel really weird producing an empty cardboard box. But we found that there are a lot of people who say what you just said, that they actually kind of want a bigger box. So we're gonna make it, and we'll see if people actually buy it. It's one of those things where I'm not trying to really make money off of it. I'm trying to serve a need and not lose money. So we'll see how that works out.
Supply and demand.
Yeah.
All right. Now, another one that's going to be coming out later this year is Charterstone.
Yeah.
Now, the thing that intrigued me about it, one of the first things I heard about that intrigued me was that there's no rule book. So,
yes.
If there's no rule book, how do we learn the game?
So this has actually evolved a little bit. Originally, when I announced Charterstone, you were absolutely correct. I announced that it would not have a rule book. At the time, I think we had gone through 2 or 3 levels of blind playtesting. And the way it didn't have a rule book at the time was that when you open the box, the game, there's like a little sheet of paper that says, the first thing to do is read this card. And so there's like a big deck of cards, kind of like in Pandemic Legacy. There's a deck of cards in a specific order, and you read the first card. And those cards acted as a tutorial. So they would walk you through how to play the game. And as you're opening the box and opening these cards, you're peeling rule stickers off the cards, and you're building the rule book with those stickers. And so originally when I announced it, the rule book was completely blank, and all of the rules were on those cards. But as we got deeper into playtesting, I realized that the novelty of having no rule book was not as it was more frustrating than it was worth, because there is a benefit, I think, to having at least some rules in place with pictures in the rule book to illustrate what's going on. that a player can, if they want to, read in advance. So the game still works the same way as originally intended. So if you don't want to read any rules in advance at all, the game will still walk you through it step by step as a tutorial in the first game. But I think the ideal experience will be as if at least one player reads the rule book in advance. And the rule book is still, it's almost empty. Like there's not much in it at all. It's just a few core ideas for the game.
Okay.
So I took it from no rule book to like a mostly empty rule book that you start out with. Yeah.
All right. Now one thing I heard that Charterstone, unlike Scythe, is not being kickstarted. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, Scythe was our last Kickstarter in October, November 2015, and since then we've done a few pre-order campaigns. But after the last pre-order campaign, I kind of just said, I'm stepping away from this, and we're just going to release everything we make from now on directly into distribution and to retailers, so that you can go to your local store and get it. Yeah. What is the name of your local store, by the way? You mentioned you have a store that you really like.
We've about a half a dozen within like a half-hour, 40-minute drive. One is
nice.
I'm based out of Charlotte, North Carolina, and the two big game stores around here is Carolina Tabletop Games, and another one originally named Your Local Game Store. So.
Your Local Game Store. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Cool. Well, hopefully they'll have our games.
I'm sure they will, because I know one they have to reorder Scythe quite a few times throughout the year. So
cool.
Yeah, but because that about the no Kickstarter, that kind of goes into my next question, because I was going to ask, you wrote a book, Crowdfunder's Strategy Guide, and then on your website, StoneMaierGames.com, you have dozens and dozens of articles on basically walking people through how to kickstart their game.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of surprised that Charterstone wouldn't be on Kickstarter, because, not question your business decision, but if I had the street creds you have, I'd be like, I'll use Kickstarter for everything, So.
Well, and I still, Kickstarter was hugely important to my company existing in the first place and growing to where it is today. I think it's a wonderful platform, and it's really not me turning my back on the platform itself, but rather it was a risk mitigation decision for the most part, in terms of all the things that can go wrong when you're trying to sell and deliver to tens of thousands of people, rather than just to a few distributors. And it was also a decision for my time. Planning and running and delivering on a Kickstarter takes a ton of time. For Scythe, I estimate it took about 5 months out of a year, spread out over the year, but a total of 5 months just for that Kickstarter, not even like designing games, but just for the Kickstarter. So I kind of made the decision that I would rather use that time and energy to design games and offer a more positive customer experience for our customers. Just focus more on that instead of Kickstarter. And who knows, maybe we'll return to it someday, but my goal is to really work on the relationships I have with distributors and retailers and sell our games that way.
Okay, very good.
But I still love Kickstarter, and I still encourage other new creators, especially, to use it. And I still write about it. As you mentioned, I have a blog. I still write 2 entries a week about crowdfunding every week, because I'm still just as fascinated with it as I've ever been. I've just not used it myself.
Yeah, and another thing that you do that I enjoy is on your YouTube channel, you talk about basically take games that are out there, and you discuss a mechanism from that game that you like.
Yeah, I've had a lot of fun with that. That's my favorite game mechanism of every game that I've played. Yeah, I'm glad you discovered that.
Yeah, that's been one of the things that I enjoyed watching, just to see what because it's neat to see what other designers like about what other people's games are doing.
Yeah,
and stuff like that. So now, one last question, and I guess it kind of goes out to the people out there that would be reading your articles about how to kickstart, how to design, stuff like that. And well, actually, I want to go off on a tangent here.
Okay.
You and I think it's too late this year to really plan on it because I think it's sold out. Is you have a let me see here. You have an event in September of Game Designer Day.
Yeah, it's the Stonemaier Games Design Day. I think this will be the third or the fourth one. I think it's the fourth, maybe the third. But yeah, it's basically if people have heard of Proto-Spiel or Unpub, which are events where designers show up with their prototypes and they play those prototypes with anyone who shows up to the event. They're very successful events. So the design day is much smaller. It's more low key. It's only about 80 or 90 people. Similar focus where designers show up with prototypes. But it's a very scheduled day. Like people sign up in advance for the exact games they want to test out and play. And we play those games. And then kind of later in the day, we change the focus to games that have already been published and focus on learning from those games as well. So it's not just playing prototypes, but it's also playing some published games.
Okay.
It's a lot of fun. And this year it's at, you're right, it is sold out, but it's at, we have a new game cafe in St. Louis called Pieces Game Cafe, so we'll have it there. And if there's interest, we'll continue to try to expand it from year to year.
Okay.
Have you been to any of those types of events, those playtest events like Proto-Spiel or Unpub?
No, I haven't. So it's something that it's on my to-do list or bucket list as far as at least as part of this podcast. I look forward to be able to attend those things. So
I bet there's one in your area because I think one of the guys who started it, Chris Kirkman at Dice Games, I think he might be in Charlotte or in that area. I bet they have one there every now and then.
Okay. Yeah. I know we locally we have a gaming convention called Mace that I've been to and GM for, stuff like that. So
cool. Do you recommend it? Good convention.
I'm sorry?
Did you recommend that convention?
Yes, very much. It's they have all kinds of games from card games to board games to role playing games, miniatures, the whole Warhammer thing and X-Wing and stuff like that. So it's the most difficult thing is just finding games that you want to play that don't overlap on other games that you want to play on their slotted time slot. So, all right.
That's probably a good problem to have. Too many games to play. Yeah. That's great.
So, so the Games Design Day sold out this year, but I'd encourage people to keep an eye out on for next year, 2018.
Yeah.
And if you're in the St. Louis area or plan to go to St. Louis, go check it out.
Yeah.
Any excuse to go someplace and play games.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, as a designer, when you put out games, and again, going back to what my original question was going to be, what's it like when you see people playing your games or talking or writing about your games? Is that? I mean, that to me, that's like being a rock star. You write a song and people are everywhere. Millions of people are singing your song, and they come to see you and play. What is that like when you see your games being enjoyed and admired by other not only other players but other designers as well?
It's a mix of, I would say, two feelings. One stems from, I've been designing games since I was 7 or 8 years old. And really all that I ever wanted at that age was for someone to play the game with me. And that felt really good when someone would decide to play what was probably not a very good game at all. That always felt really good. And so the overwhelming feeling is just joy. It's just kind of in awe almost. I'm just amazed that people are playing the games that I designed. But there's also a touch of like fear and nervousness because I want them to have that same joy that I'm experiencing, and I want them to have that same feeling. And I know not everyone's gonna love the same games, but so mostly it's like joy and just excitement that people are playing the games. But there's a little touch of like, oh, I hope you like it. Well, I hope you're having fun. Or if you're not having fun, I hope you find a game that you do have fun with. That's definitely part of it. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, we're certainly enjoying it, that's for sure.
Well, thank you.
So thank you so much, Jay, for being with us and taking time to talk with us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure, Thomas. I look forward to seeing what else you create on your podcast.
Thank you. And I want to invite you to, can you come back later this year when my Charterstone gets released? We can talk about that more deeply.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm happy to talk anytime you want.
Excellent. And to all my meeples out there, you heard it right here. It's a done deal. Jamey will be back later on this year. We're going to hold you to it. But yeah, well, hey, we got to wait till the end of the year for the new Star Wars movie, so we could wait for Charterstone. It'll be worth the wait, I'm sure.
I hope so. Maybe not on the level of Star Wars, but hopefully. Yeah.
Well, Jamey, thank you so much again. I really appreciate it, and we'll talk to you later.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, there you have it. And I'd just like to thank Jamey again for allowing me to interview him for the podcast. It was a lot of fun. I was nervous. I was able to breathe a lot easier once we got off the phone, and I double-checked to see if I actually was recording. And I was, obviously, so I was able to take a breather and get my blood pressure down and everything, and just relax. So thank you again, Jamey, for agreeing to be on the show. I really appreciate it. And again, we'll have Jamey back later on in the year when Charterstone comes out, and we could talk more about that as when he comes on. And who knows, he may be he's the very first guest that we had on, and he might be the very first person we had repeat guest to come back and join us again. So yeah, that's something to look forward to for later on in the year. This is Tom, the Mega Meeple, saying we'll see you at the gaming table.